We are very fortunate tonight to have as our moderator Professor William Mayer, who teaches courses in American politics, public opinion, and media and politics in the Political Science Department at Northeastern University. Among his publications are In Pursuit of the White House 2000, How We Choose Our Presidential Nominees, and The Divided Democrats, Ideological Unity, Party Reform, and Presidential Elections. Please join me in welcoming him to get the ball rolling.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you, Tom, for asking me to be the moderator of this program. Tonight's forum, as Tom said, is about the current position and future prospects of the Republican Party in Massachusetts. What is the party's current position? Well, it depends very much on which office or offices you look at. Massachusetts Republicans clearly have done quite well in recent gubernatorial elections, winning the last 4 in a row. By the time Mitt Romney's first term comes to an end, 4 different Republicans will have occupied the governor's chair for 16 years in a row. But if one turns from the governor's office to virtually any other elective position in Massachusetts, the picture looks a lot less rosy. The same election that brought Mitt Romney to the governor's office saw Democrats triumph essentially everywhere else. Democrats now occupy both of the state seats in the U.S. Senate, all 10 of the state seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, and all of the Commonwealth's other so-called constitutional offices, the statewide offices that are elective. Democrats also won in 2002 136 of the 160 seats in the Massachusetts State House of Representatives and 34 of 40 seats in the state Senate. Now, the problems that the Massachusetts State Republican Party currently faces are not entirely of its own making. How well any state party does in the United States is partly, perhaps largely, a function of the positions taken and the record achieved by the national parties. And particularly over about the last 40 years, the Republican Party's national profile has made it, I think it's fair to say, considerably more attractive to a lot of voters in the southern and western states, but significantly less so to many voters in the Northeast. Hence, the position that the Republican Party in Massachusetts finds itself. One way of appreciating this point is to ask the following question. Who was the last Republican presidential candidate who ran better in Massachusetts than he did in the rest of the country? To clarify my question just a bit, the last Republican presidential candidate to carry Massachusetts was Ronald Reagan in 1984. But Reagan won 51% of the vote in Massachusetts while winning 59% in the rest of the country. So who was the last Republican presidential candidate whose percentage of the vote in Massachusetts exceeded his percentage in the United States as a whole? And the answer is Dwight Eisenhower in 1956. Every other Republican candidate has run less well in Massachusetts than in the United States. So the National Republican Party, if I can put it this way, has not always made it easy to be a Republican in Massachusetts. Nevertheless, there is some role in all this for state and local leadership. It may be quite a while before Massachusetts is a banner Republican state, as it was in the latter half of the 1800s, but there's nothing inevitable about the fact that the Democrats outnumber Republicans by about 6-1 in both the state Senate and the State House of Representatives, or the fact that there are currently no Republicans in the state's U.S. congressional delegation. And so tonight we're here to ask, what, if anything, can Massachusetts Republicans do? What are they doing to make the situation different? And we have, I think, a very good panel tonight. Our first speaker is Dominic Ianno, who is the executive director of the Massachusetts Republican Party, a position that makes him responsible for the party's daily operations and also its principal spokesman. A veteran of several statewide campaigns, Mr. Ianno recently led the research department for the successful Romney-Healy ticket. He also served as press secretary for the Office of Administration and Finance under both Governors Cellucci and Jane Swift. Dominic Ianno.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Ford Hall Forum for inviting us here tonight to talk about this great topic, particularly Tom Formicola, who I think was critical in putting this together. I would like to sort of address my remarks tonight, and you'll hear obviously from two other people later, but I'd like to sort of go through a little historical perspective of how the Republican Party got to where it is today in Massachusetts. You know, everybody says this is a Democratic state, and it's tough to remember the last time that Republicans really were in control of anything besides the governor's office. But if you just go back a short 50 years ago, Massachusetts actually was a strongly leaning Republican state. In 1952, as the professor said, Dwight Eisenhower won Massachusetts on the presidential ticket. A Republican named Christian Herter knocked off the incumbent governor, Governor Deaver. And Republicans actually controlled both branches of the legislature. In the House, they had 123 to 117 majority, close, but they had the majority. In the Senate, it was 25 to 15. The only real success the Democrats seemed to have that year, actually, was that a young United States senator was elected, only the third Democrat elected United States senator in Massachusetts history at the time. His name was John F. Kennedy. But 1952's successes were short-lived. In 1954, the state house fell back into Democrat hands, where it's been ever since for 50 years. And the Senate fell back to them in 1958. And today the numbers are pretty staggering. In the House of Representatives, we only have 23 representatives out of 160 seats. And in the Senate, we only have 6 out of 40 seats. There's a lot of factors of how that happened, I think. Most notably was probably 2 strong leaders emerged in the Democrat Party in the state whose influence I think still stays with us, Tip O'Neill and John Kennedy. But if you look at the voter registration numbers back then, again, the state was fairly mixed. There were 47% of the voters were unenrolled voters, 28% of the voters were Republicans, and 29% were Democrats. Over the next 30 years or so to 1986, which I think a lot of people have considered probably the worst years of the Republican Party over the last 50, we had a very, I guess, a laughing stock performance in the governor's race and in the legislative races. And at that time, enrollment in the Republican Party dropped to 389,000 voters, which is only 13% of the population. Democrats were at 47%, and unenrolleds were at 40%. So the state actually was pretty strongly in a Democrat fold. There was one ray of hope for us in 1986, and that was that Mike Dukakis was reelected. It gave him the opportunity to catapult into the presidential race and won the nomination. And I like to consider Mike Dukakis, as one of your colleagues, I believe, as one of the founding fathers of the current Massachusetts Republican Party, because it's really one of the main reasons we've been able to hold on to the governor's office for the last 4 elections. In 1989 and 1990, the last time we had a Democrat governor and a Democrat-controlled legislature, the state's finances were in terrible shape. We had billion-dollar deficits, and their solution was, let's raise taxes more and more. Let's raise them $1 billion. Didn't work. Let's raise them $1 billion again. And the voters remembered that. It's the main reason why Bill Weld won a close election in 1990 over John Silver. And voters haven't forgotten since. And Bill Weld was able to really tackle the economy because he was fortunate enough to have a veto-proof minority in the state Senate. At that time, in 1990, there were a lot of senators, like the 9 senators elected, so there were 16 senators out of 40, and he was able to sustain a veto, which really gave him the best bully pulpit to promote his economic recovery package. In 1994, when Bill Weld went back before the voters, the economy was doing great. He brought us out of the fiscal mess that we were in. He had a little funded and little known opponent, and he got over 70% of the vote in his reelection. Governor Weld resigned, and Governor Slucci came on as governor. In 1998, he had a reelection fight, and that was a close race. That race was won because Governor Cellucci was doing a good job. Unemployment was really low. The economy was humming along. And he was able to articulate to voters that we didn't need to, there was talks of freezing the income tax or possibly raising it. He was able to articulate a strong message of fiscal discipline. His opponent was not. His opponent was always mired in answering questions why he would refuse to sign a no new taxes pledge when there was 2.5% unemployment. And Governor Cellucci was successful. And then 2002, the reason we won the governor's race was pretty clear. The state people thought was moving again on the wrong track, not the right track. The national economy was obviously affecting us. And we had a great leader, two leaders, in Governor Romney and Lieutenant Governor Healy, running for office as outsiders. They had no ties to special interests. They were able to articulate a message of reform. They were able to articulate that they owed nothing to anybody. They wanted to come in and do what's right for Massachusetts. In opposition, they had an opponent who was the insider at the wrong time. When you're the insider and people don't like the way government's going, you're not really going to do very well. And she continued to tout her endorsements of special interests in Beacon Hill politicians, and it's what ultimately drove the public away from her. So we've won the governor's races, but we haven't been able to translate those victories into local races or the Senate races or the congressional races. And the question is sort of why? Well, I think that we've one of the principal problems is that we haven't been able to articulate a strong enough message for the rest of our candidates. We always do a good job of articulating statewide why we do better, but it's tough. It's difficult to beat incumbent legislators in particular. The more local the race it is, the more known the representative or senator will be, and it's tough to convince people why that person is a part of the problem. Everybody hates the legislature, but they like their own legislator. So we've had a few reasons why I think that we haven't been able to take this party and take the successes to the top and really implement them into other races. And you'll hear why I think we're going to do this year from our next speaker. But there's a couple reasons. One is when you have such a strong majority in the legislature, you run into a problem when every 10 years when there's redistricting. The stronger the majority is, the more they get their way in carving out their own districts and literally carving up the pie. 2 years ago when the legislature redistricted, they took a few towns, small towns, or small to mid-sized towns like Chelmsford and Walpole, and divvied them up into four separate House districts. So each one precinct tied in with some Democrat-leaning city or town around its perimeter, and didn't give an opportunity to those communities to elect a Republican legislator, or made it a lot more difficult. So in the state where gerrymandering was created, it's still alive and well, and we need to reverse the numbers in the legislature to hopefully a few years down the road stop them from playing politics with the legislative districts. We actually are seeing today what politicking with elections can do. We have a state Senate seat that is now open, and the Democrats have decided to have the special election, breaking tradition and breaking what we think is constitutional law, saying there is a vacancy while a senator still sits in her office, so they could set the election on March 2nd, which is the day of the presidential primary, when, lo and behold, the Democrats have a lot of candidates running and the Republicans don't have a contested primary. So we're actually going to court to challenge that. We think it's wrong. We think it's unconstitutional. But it just goes to show you what happens when you have such a strong one-party dominance and a lack of balance in the legislature. The second reason I think that we haven't really done quite a good job in winning some of the other races is we've had a difference in philosophy, I think, from our previous governors. Not that it was the wrong philosophy, but different philosophy, which was they were really reluctant to be the political leader of the party while they were the elected leader of the state. Their philosophy was more to get along in the legislature and get whatever they could out of their agenda accomplished. What I think we have today with the governor and lieutenant governor are strong leaders who believe so strongly in their message of reform and cleaning up the mess on Beacon Hill that if the Democrats refuse to go along, we'll go out, because the public really wants reform, we'll go out and find people to replace them, because that's the way it should be done. So I think with strong leadership from the corner office, we'll have a great opportunity to have success next year. And finally, I think we've had a lot of our own problems. The Republican Party in Massachusetts is really known as the sort of shootout in the lifeboat. You know, the smaller we are, the more we have infighting, and a lack of a clear message moving forward. A lot of times over the last decade, some of our best candidates have been talked out of running for office by other Republicans, not Democrats or anybody else. The reason is that, again, there's been a sort of go along to get along, and let's see what we can get for ourselves, and not really promote other Republicans or help them get elected to the extent that we can. And it's particularly noticeable in the legislature. So we haven't done a good enough job of reaching out to various affiliated groups or Republican organized groups or building up our grassroots. And we're trying, and it's not a perfect process, and we're working on it. And I think that you'll hear from Darrell in a bit why I think we're moving in the right direction. We're serious about winning other races. We're not happy with just having the governor's office. We need more elected Republicans. We need balance in the legislature, in our congressional delegation, and across the Commonwealth. So with that, I want to leave it to Darrell to talk to you about sort of where the Republican Party is today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. As Dominic said, our second speaker is Darrell Crate, who is chairman of the Massachusetts State Republican Party, a position to which he was elected earlier this year. He had, of course, been active in the state party for a number of years before that and served as treasurer and finance chair for Kerry Healy's successful run for lieutenant governor in 2002. He is also executive vice president and chief financial officer of the Affiliated Managers Group, an asset management company based in Pride's Crossing, Massachusetts, that the Boston Globe has named as one of its top 100 businesses in each of the past 5 years. Darrell Crate.
There we go. Okay, well, thanks for being here, Ford Forum. Thank you very much. It's terrific to get to talk a little bit about what's going on at the Republican Party. And as Dominic outlined, what the Republican Party has done over the last 15 years with regard to the results that it's generated has been nothing less than pathetic. But I'll tell you that that this is the time for change in the party. And while we've done very well at the highest office, we have not done what we need to do at the lower level races, the legislative races, the Senate, the House, and then not to mention even the local races that are out there. And there's so many folks today, you just run in and people say, I'm not partisan, not interested in party politics. But parties are fundamental to this democracy, because what a party does is it organizes the debate. It channels it in a way so that the public can debate and understand the issues and take positions. And that's something that the Republican Party has not served the folks in the Commonwealth with very well over these last 10 to 15 years. And it is our mission to restore balance to this government, to act as a very functional opposition party, and we're doing it. I'll tell you one other reason that the Republican Party has not been successful is that we haven't run candidates. Very simple principle, but nonetheless, you look just last year or 2 years before that or 2 years before that, the expected amount of candidates, if you were the Democratic chairman, you'd say, well, gosh, I know there are going to be about 80 candidates that are going to be run by the Republican Party. I know I've got, my 200. So how do I manage my resources? How am I going to manage the intellectual capital that I have in my party? That is an easy job, because there's a lot of smart folks on that side, a lot of smart folks on our side, but they can take many of the folks that are interested in Democrats winning and channel them on relatively very few races and dominate the legislature. Well, again, that's not going to be the case. And I would say the low point for this party was when, well, the high point was when Kerry actually became chairman. The low point was just before it. I remember talking to her back in, I guess it was December of a couple years ago, when she had just assumed control. The party was bankrupt. The files were a shambles. There was very little organization to the office. And again, there were folks who had predicted that the Republican Party was dead in this state. She deliberately began to set forth a process to build this party, and that has continued today. Back in January, when I took over the party, it was solvent, which was a really big deal. But again, we were just building our base. We had an office out in Wakefield. We brought the office back into Boston, back in the center, where we could have more interns. We could have more volunteers come by. We could be closer to the State House and the action. And while that sounds like something very simple, it's fundamental for a party, because a party grows, through the energy of all the folks who just want to contribute a little bit to what we do. So changing our office was certainly critical. We had a governor and a lieutenant governor who have just an outstanding message and were willing to provide leadership to the party. While we had some very nice Republican governors before, they were more caring about being ambassadors, of getting some things done with that Democratic legislature. And they reached out and were trying to negotiate, with this dominant party. This governor and lieutenant governor said, we are here to work with the legislature. We are here to work for the people. But we're also here to build this party so that we can have a Republican Party that at first acts as an opposition party, so that folks don't get just one side of the message, and are able to have a reasonable debate where we can decide issues, and we can have a party that's strong enough so that when voters disagree with what the legislator's doing, they have an opportunity to vote for somebody else. Again, a fundamental principle in our democracy, and it's something that we are working to do. We have more candidates today who are ready to run than we've had run in the past. And the quality of our candidates are outstanding. And again, I give a lot of credit to the governor and lieutenant governor for this reform message, which is simple, which is straightforward, and makes a ton of sense. Because before this team came to the corner office, there were two alternatives, which were either to cut spending or raise taxes. There's this third alternative, which is reform. And what we're doing is we have a team at the state party that we've recruited that's just outstanding. Mike Murphy, who's a national political strategist, helps us each and every day. We've got Dominic, we've got Tim O'Brien, we've got Matt Govin, and Alex Dunn, who did an outstanding job for Governor Romney in getting the vote out. From a fundraising perspective, so often the Democrats, because there's been no opposing voice, characterize the Republicans as those wealthy folks, and it must be only wealthy folks who are donating. Well, I'm here to tell you that we've had over 7,000 donations to the party that are less than $100. This stands in stark contrast to where the Republican Party has been, and we have 5,000 new donors to our party this year. And what that's translated into is raising close to $1.6 million in this off-election year, which is orders of magnitude higher than has been raised by the Republican Party before. And that is enabling us to go out and help candidates and build an infrastructure. We at the party are going to give candidates the tools so that they can run these elections. And what does that mean? There are some very simple things that need to be done. We need to set up a get out the vote effort that was very successful for the governor and will be very successful for all of our candidates. But again, that's creating this technological backbone where we can identify every single Republican-leaning voter in the state on a database and have folks in their neighborhood, in their communities, contact them who are supporting our candidates, so that we make sure that folks who are interested in our message get to hear it, and those folks are able to step forward and get out on Election Day and cast their vote. We've been energizing the town committees, the county committees, and reaching out to affiliated organizations. And hopefully we've breathed some new life into those areas. Can't do everything at once. Anybody who's here is interested in getting involved in their town committee, I encourage you to get out and do it. But what that means is it really adds vibrance to these to the grassroots effort. And as Dominic was discussing in the history and a little bit about what I began my comments with, is that so often we focus on the top races, but we need this to be an effort that develops right at those town committees, at the grassroots, and we're doing all we can with our resources to help to nurture the grassroots and create the support that our candidates are going to need on the ground. Because our most significant challenge has been folks in Massachusetts believe in our common sense approach and message. When you look at the ballot initiatives, when you look at the polls, this really is a Republican thinking state. But the problem is that we've had senators and representatives who are kind people, and I appreciate their dedication to public service, and they're known in their communities, and folks go out and vote for them. What is going to be new about 2004 is that there's going to be another candidate out there, very well qualified, understanding of the issues, but proposing another set of alternatives. And what we're seeing in the legislature today is that this group will do almost anything to avoid a fair fight and an honest debate on the issues. Dominic referenced the Cheryl Jakes seat. This is a Senate seat where the Democrats, the Senate, voted before a vacancy. The Constitution says there should be a vacancy, and then they can set a general election date. But they know Cheryl is going to resign. They also know the presidential primary is on March 2nd. So what did they need to do? By statute, there needed to be enough time before that presidential primary to set the election date, and so they did before this vacancy existed. We think this is unconstitutional. Any Republican chairman before me would have thought it was unconstitutional. In fact, the way this will be decided is if you believe vacancy means that there isn't somebody sitting in the seat, well, then you have to come our way. What's happened in the past is the Republican Party has gone on and complained and maybe made a couple comments, but we now have the resources to get out, and we've sent a complaint to the Supreme Judicial Court, and we're going to fight this, and we're going to be out there, and we're going to challenge the Democrats, and this is good for democracy. It's good for the Commonwealth, and we intend to do it in a way that really does elevate the dialogue in the state. What's our mission? It's very simple. We need to give, in order for balanced government to exist in the state, we need to give our governor a veto. And that means where he just has the opportunity to veto items and not have it overridden. Last year, the governor had close to 300 vetoes overridden. This is an incredible number. It's more than any other state, and it's even a record in Massachusetts. What do we need to do to give that governor a veto so we can bring balanced government back to the Commonwealth? Well, there are 68 seats in the House where Governor Romney won. They're Republican-leaning districts, and the governor won in those districts, and they have incumbent Democrats. We just need to win a third of those seats to obtain the veto in the House. In the Senate, very similar. There are 21 seats in the Senate, again, where Governor Romney won, and there's an incumbent Democrat. If we win, again, about a third of those seats, we can restore the veto in the Senate. This in comparison to prior years and gains that the party has made, would be exceptional. But again, we're doing everything we can from a grassroots level and broadly, recruiting candidates and putting an infrastructure in place to make it happen. And we certainly believe that it's achievable. This last October, we held a conference out in Waltham, and it was essentially an activist school. We were teaching candidates about fundraising. We taught candidates about working with the media. We gave activists ways in which they could be helpful to candidates. And we had 300 to 400 Republicans out there in the middle of a Saturday, a beautiful Saturday in the fall, and folks were excited. And it was energizing, and I think this is the first time this has been done in a very long time, because there were folks there who were interested in running who said, I'm a Republican, I'm alone, this is not a Republican state. And they were surrounded by literally hundreds of folks who wanted them to do well. And we're going to run many more of these groups, and I know the attendance is going to be greater. So the other sign that things are going quite well for us and that we're doing the right things is that I hear from the Democrats, we're beginning to hear more and more quips and quibbles from the Democrats every day. And I take that as a sign of our success. You can see Tom Finneran gathered up the folks in the House most recently. They needed to have a conference to talk about these issues. If you look in the Senate, you can see again with this Jake's race, they are doing anything they can to hold on to seat by seat because they know that we're bringing forward a set of issues in 2004 that are going to make sense. They're going to be coherent. They're going to be about bringing accountability to government. They're going to be about holding the line on taxes. We're not talking about cutting taxes, so that the wealthy can get more wealthy. We're talking about holding the line. We're talking about moving programs forward that work. We're talking about reform. And that we really believe that's what the people want. That's why I got excited about this. When Kerry originally got excited, she was contagious in her enthusiasm for what could be done here. That's how I ended up getting into the party, and I'm so excited to be leading what is, I know, going to be a transformation for the Republican Party. So I'm excited for you to meet our candidates over this next year. And I'm so glad that they're going to be on a very good side of the issues and in a form and manner that's going to be attractive to the voting public here. So thank you very much.
Well, our final speaker needs no introduction, but I'm going to provide one anyway. Kerry Healy is the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As you probably know, prior to being elected to that position in 2002, Lieutenant Governor Healy worked as a consultant for Apt Associates in Cambridge, where she specialized in issues of law and public policy. She conducted research for the U.S. Department of Justice in such areas as child abuse, domestic violence, gang violence, and the prosecution of drug crimes. She also authored 4 books and numerous articles and has been an adjunct faculty member at both Endicott College and the University of Massachusetts at Lowell. Perhaps most relevant, as both of our previous speakers have mentioned, Lieutenant Governor Healy also served as chair of the Massachusetts Republican Party, during which she had to confront many of the challenges and issues that we're talking about tonight. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Lieutenant Governor Kerry Healy.
Thank you, Professor Mayer. And I suppose if enthusiasm can revive the fortunes of our party, we know that with Dominic and Daryl, we will be doing very well next year, won't we? I want to thank the Ford Hall Forum for inviting me to participate in this forum tonight, and also for focusing attention on something that is obviously very near and dear to all of the panelists here tonight, which is the future of the Republican Party in Massachusetts. I think that there has been a misconception in the past, because we do elect governors and lieutenant governors that are Republicans, that perhaps that's adequate, that perhaps that gives the balance that we need to offset the domination of the Democratic Party in the House and the Senate and in our congressional delegation and in the U.S. Senate. And I would argue that it doesn't. And it doesn't both substantively and not in theory either. One of the things that we have found this year, the governor and I, in our efforts to reform government here in Massachusetts, is that because we don't have the veto, because we don't have adequate representation as a party in the House and the Senate, we are unable to effectuate all of the reforms that are needed to get our economy moving here again in Massachusetts, and to truly deliver on all of the promises that we made to the people of Massachusetts that include that we don't need to choose between this false dichotomy that Darrell mentioned, which has always been presented as, in tough times, you need to either cut critical services or raise taxes. That's always been the choice, and I think it's a false choice that the legislature, the Democratic legislature, has presented to the people of Massachusetts. And people in Massachusetts are good-hearted people, and they do not want to cut funding to our schools or to the poorest of the poor or health care. They don't want to do those things, and so again and again, they acquiesce to this notion that they need to pay higher taxes. And our message as a party and also as a team last year when we were running for governor and lieutenant governor was that there is a third way, and that the Republican Party represents that third way, and it's reform. It's reform of the way we do business on Beacon Hill, and it's the notion that the reason why anyone should be in government is public service and not self-service. And it's one of those concepts that seems so simple, and yet the way party politics have evolved here in Massachusetts and elsewhere as well, I'm sure the professor can tell us, is that a lot of the way that parties have perpetuated their own existence and their own power depends on their ability to give patronage jobs to their supporters, to fund programs for their donors and their friends. And we came into office saying that we aren't going to do that. And we told our friends and our supporters that they couldn't expect a job from us. And we told the people who wrote us checks that they shouldn't expect favors. And we meant it. And maybe some people were surprised at first. And we came back and said, we meant that when we said it, because there's no other way to slim down government that's doubled in size practically in the last 10 years. We needed to bring it to heel, and the only way we could do that while still maintaining the critical services that we all agree we need excellent schools, we need great health care, the best in the country, and we need to take care of those who are needy. And we can do that within the context of a $23 billion budget. $23 billion. We can accomplish our goals, our core goals, within that $23 billion, but not if we still have to support patronage and waste throughout government. We tried to do a number of reforms this past year. We're almost to that magic one-year point where I feel like I can reflect a little bit about what worked and what didn't work, what we were able to accomplish and what we weren't able to accomplish. And we have some things that I think that we are very proud of, both as a party, and I know that the governor and I are pleased. The top of the list is that we were able to close not only a $650 million gap in the 03 budget, but a $3.2 billion gap in last year's budget without raising taxes. And that is so important, not just to make sure that the wealthy have more money in their pocket. That doesn't have anything to do with what we're concerned about. It's for the working families of Massachusetts, and more importantly, even yet, in these hard economic times, it's making sure that the businesses here in Massachusetts, over half of which are small businesses, to make sure that those small businesses, many of which pay the individual income tax rate, had a dependable source of being able to do their business plan, to know what it was going to cost to do business in Massachusetts in the coming year. And we don't want to drive jobs out of Massachusetts at this time, so it was critical that we held the line on taxes, and we were able to. Second, we were able to clean up some of the most egregious examples of waste and patronage. The Metropolitan District Commission, everyone, I remember the headlines, everyone said, you'll never get rid of the MDC. 4 governors have tried to get rid of the MDC. It'll never happen. And it was headed by a Republican. And we had lots of Republican patronage in that organization, and we abolished it. We abolished it, we downsized it. Thank you. And I can tell you that there will be no suffering in terms of the maintenance of our parks and our recreational facilities. You will get the best possible care for all of the assets of the MDC now that they're in the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So that was a small but I think very symbolic win, and we're very pleased about that. Another thing that maybe doesn't mean so much to the people in this room, but out with the municipal officials who I work with day in and day out, meant a great deal, was that we brought the budget in on time. Now that is an extraordinary thing to say. Only 3 times in the last 21 years did the budget come in on time. Now what does that mean in Massachusetts? Well, it means that all of those little cities and towns around the Commonwealth that have town meeting could plan. It means that all the municipalities knew how many teachers they could hire in the coming year and what their level of funding was going to be for public safety. Again, it's just that regular knowledge of what is our economy going to be like that keeps things moving. So we were very pleased to be able to deliver that budget on time. Another thing that was very important to us and to all those people who care about the delivery of services to those who are ill or children or all of the populations who need extra services from Massachusetts, we were able to boil down Health and Human Services from 15 separate siloed agencies into 4 agencies. And those agencies are now coordinating services for the first time. We have one whole group that looks at family services and services for children. In the past, if someone had a problem and they needed help from Health and Human Services, they would have to go to 15 different agencies to get all the services that they might be entitled to. And we're starting to consolidate it, and ultimately we want to have a single point of access where you'll have one case manager go in, say, these are my problems, and someone will be able to tell you all of the state services you're eligible for and help you apply for those services, filling out one form, not 15 and not even 4. So we're working on this. That's in the works, but we're glad to have brought it down from 15 to 4. And I suppose the most high-profile change was we believed that we truly needed a change of leadership at UMass, a new approach to how we do business at UMass, and we will be having a world-class leader for that university in the future. And And we have professionalized that board. Our appointments to that board are people who are nationally known, who have run wonderful, large organizations, headed universities. We will make sure that our university system here in Massachusetts is something to be admired by the entire nation. And finally, we were able to do little things that meant a lot to me personally. As you mentioned in my introduction, I'm a criminologist by trade. So we've been able to do a lot of things in the field of criminal justice this year that I have felt are very needed. We've reformed the sex offender registry. We just signed into law, finally, after many court challenges and back and forth, we finally signed into law something that will allow us to put the pictures of the most dangerous sex offenders on the Internet. And so it won't just be your city and town anymore, because guess what? These folks move from one place to another. You can go on the Internet, find out who all of the most dangerous sex offenders are in Massachusetts. We also, for the first time, have a law that says that sex offenders need to register before they leave jail. There are 3,000 dangerous sex offenders in jail right now who are going to have to register. In the past, we let them go and then went out and tried to find them. It was an awful waste of resources, and it endangered the public and our children. I'm so glad that we have been able to change that. We've changed our drunk driving laws. We were the last state in the country that didn't have per se drunk driving laws, which means to say that if you had a drunk driving test, if you had a breathalyzer test and it showed you to be intoxicated at the illegal level, then that was proof that you were intoxicated. 40% of our cases in our district courts, 40% were people challenging their breathalyzer tests. 40%. Imagine the time and energy and taxpayer dollars wasted so that we could keep drunk drivers on the road. It just was a tragedy. And so we are so pleased that we were able to sign per se legislation this year as well. And so there are a number of things we are genuinely pleased about, but there are a few things that we have yet to do. And our agenda for the upcoming year is quite crowded. And it depends greatly on us being able to accomplish some of the party-building tasks that Darrell spoke about and Dominic spoke about. We want to make sure that we can merge the Turnpike Authority with Mass Highway. The Turnpike Authority does not manage its roads as efficiently as Mass Highway. And were we able to merge those two together, we would be able to save over $200 million from our budget this upcoming year. That's right. And we are going to fight for that change, because when you think about the pain experienced by our cities and towns due to cut in municipal aid last year, and how much do you think that cut in municipal aid totaled? $226 million. We can save $216 this year, upcoming year, by merging the Turnpike Authority with Mass Highway. It is absurd that we did not have support for that in the House and the Senate last year. It was a crime. And we are going to go back this year and fight for that change. We're going to fight for construction reform. Over 80% of our construction companies and workers are non-union workers, and yet our laws are all focused on the 20% of our union construction workers. And as a result, when we build a building in the public sector, it costs us 30% more than if you built a building in the private sector. And when you're looking at $14 billion of new schools that we want to build, we can save the Commonwealth, you, the taxpayers, billions of dollars by getting meaningful construction reforms in. And we can open the doors to more construction workers, more companies working for us to help build these properties. And that's another thing I'm going to be fighting hard for in this coming year. Well, I think that I want to leave enough time for questions, so I'm going to stop right here. But I want to let you know that we think that most people in Massachusetts feel that the reform agenda is common sense. We feel that most people understand that their dollars aren't being spent as wisely as they can, and it's not a partisan issue. It's simply that the Republican Party is willing to make the changes that are needed to make sure that those dollars are well spent. And we are very grateful for the support that we've had throughout the Commonwealth. We're extremely grateful for the talented, very talented candidates who are coming forward at this point. And we hope that we will only see more and more as we get closer to the election cycle. Darrell and Dominic are positioned to give those candidates in the 2004 election cycle all the support they could possibly hope for. And we have high hopes of working to retrieve that, yes, that hope that we are going to have the veto again in either the House or the Senate in 2004. So I'll leave you on that note. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. There he is.
Well, we will now open the forum up for questions. If you, I guess that mic is the only one, Tom? But I will exercise the prerogative of the chair to get in the first question, if I may, which I would direct to Darrell. If you ask most political scientists about how you increase the number of seats that a party holds in a legislature, they would say that the first thing is to get some good candidates. There's an old saw that you can't beat somebody with nobody, and after a lot of intensive analysis, it turns out it's right. And so I would ask, the question I would ask is just, can you tell us a little bit about, sort of a little bit more specifically, about your sense of, for example, of the 160 seats in the State House, how many do you think will actually have a Republican candidate this time around?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to talk about it. But as you know, the second rule in political science is that it's also an expectations management game. So I think we've already delivered the result, which is we know we're going to have more candidates this coming year than we've had in any other. I think people will be impressed that we'll have materially more. And they're going to see opposition in many of the areas that we think are yearning for opposition. And as I was saying in my comments, again, just by having more candidates, it diffuses the existing incumbents' ability to attack our candidates. And if you look broadly, again, the numbers have always been 200 versus 80. If we can just increase our candidates 10, 15, 20, 30%, you can see how much that dilutes the effort, and it makes each race a fair fight.
Okay. Do you want to?
I was just wondering how the Massachusetts Republican Party differentiates itself from the national Republican Party in terms of issues.
Well, I think the fundamental difference is that we're focused on state issues. And again, we've got a set of races that are paramount for us, and we're focused on how government works in the Commonwealth. Again, state issues and national issues are very different, and the things that we can address, and I'd sort of leave it to the Lieutenant Governor to talk about, but the things we can address in government in this Commonwealth are far different, and to be frank, affect the lives of citizens, I think, more on a day-to-day basis than issues on the national level, and that's how we're defining our party.
I would say that we fully support our president and support his efforts on behalf of freedom and combating terrorism around the world, and we have very strong relationships with our Republican administration and Republican legislators from other states, and it allows us to effectively lobby for Massachusetts interests in terms of transportation funding, funding on Homeland Security, funding on Health and Human Services, in a way that we would not be able to were we a Democratic administration. So I think that our relationship with the National Republican Party is a healthy one, and I know that the governor has taken a leadership role in the Republican Governors Association or in the National Governors Association having to do with Homeland Security issues. So I don't see that there is any distance between us.
If I could just add to that. One problem we have, and I talk about balance in the legislature here in the state, another problem we have is lack of balance in our congressional delegation. And unfortunately, we have 12 Democrats, 10 congressmen, and 2 U.S. senators who happen to be in the minority party. It doesn't help us, and we're very grateful that we have the governor and lieutenant governor who are able to, use their connections in this administration to bring resources back to Massachusetts. Over the last 10 to 12 years, we've seen a big decline in the per dollar amount we pay in federal taxes and the amount we get back. And we need some balance in our own delegation to start reversing that number.
My name is Aaron Goldstein. I'm a relatively new member of the Republican Party, and Darrell, I was particularly struck by your comments about the reticence of some Republicans wanting to help other Republicans, and to me it strikes me as self-defeating that a member of the same party wouldn't want to help another member of the same party. Over the fall, the Massachusetts Federation of Young Republicans, of which I'm a member, had a Republicans Helping Republicans campaign, and we participated in a number of the local races, including the mayoral race in Chicopee, Melrose, Woburn, and Fitchburg, and a couple of school races. Worcester comes to mind. And it's, there's no magic solutions to a political party becoming successful. It's, a lot of hard work. It's a lot of wearing down the shoe leather. But you get an opportunity to see, various parts of the state. You get an opportunity to meet people, to get to know them. You get outside, you have fresh air, and and you learn politics is pretty fun. And it's something
they don't call it a party for nothing.
Yeah, so, absolutely, absolutely. So I just wanted to make that comment that effort is certainly being made, and efforts like that, whether through Young Republicans or whether in Boston or in Springfield or Pittsfield or wherever it may be, it's those kind of small day-to-day efforts that make a political party successful.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for your comments and enthusiasm. We're really so fortunate in this state to have a young and vibrant and excited and energized group of young Republicans who are doing just a terrific job. So,
getting around last fall too, we were. We tried to, at the party level, again, it's tough for us to get involved in so many local races. What we learned, one of the things we did when we came into office is we didn't have even a grasp of how many local Republican elected officials there are in Massachusetts. There's 1,600 local Republican elected officials across the state. And that's tough for us as a party of 7 or 8 people, staff in Boston, to support them. But what we're trying to do is build the city and town committees, build the organizations, and teach people how to fish instead of bringing them the fish, so to speak. So, but the young Republican group that went around this fall was fantastic in helping those local officials.
And one person who should be thanked is Gina Howes, who organized a lot of those efforts, and I think it's thanks to her that people who might not have ordinarily come together did come together.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Robert Hall, Sr. I'm the host of the Common Perspective, and I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'm a person who's an American from Georgia. I'm also a member of the Republican Party since the days of when Clayton Utor was the national chairman. And I have just one question. Now, on my program, and we just recently went web, so we're international now. On my program, I've had the Lieutenant Governor, I've had Alan Simpson, Jane Inman, James Pfizer, Dan Grabowski, Robert Gettins, most recently Ron Kaufman, and I'm hoping that sometime in the near future that the common man can have you all on my program in Cambridge. I think I sent an invitation to you, and I'm hoping that you will acknowledge that and come on in, and let's talk about politics, because one thing is most important. For a person like me to be a member of the Republican Party here in Massachusetts, it is not easy. Secondly, I'm not talking about patronage, but you do look after those in your own house first. You don't take care of folks outside your house. So I'd like to know if there's a possibility that we can do that sometime in the near future, since you've been in for a year or so. And I think it's time to do an introspection and reflection and hear some of the views from the common folks like me.
I'd love to do it. One of the things, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm for getting up and extending the invitation in person. We get lots of requests, and you've really differentiated yourself, and I'd be more than happy to come when sometime it's
because I know you can't forget
soon.
me now. I'm the guy who was sitting next to
Robert
Mitt
Hall.
Romney.
I got it. Robert Hall Sr. It's clear to me.
Romney. Okay, so let's do this.
Yep. No,
so
anytime.
I'm holding you accountable.
You got it.
I will talk with Mr.
Yep, happy
Next
to do
week
it.
we'll work this out.
Robert, you and I are old friends. I'll be glad to come on your show.
Right.
Okay.
We'll work that out. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good to see you. God bless.
Yes, hello. I am a local Republican ward chairman. That means I serve under the state committee. In fact, we are now in Ward 3 Boston, which is my district. And as a local chairman, I consider among the highest and most important of my duties is the recruitment of candidates. So I'm very pleased to hear what I've heard tonight about the plan for recruiting more candidates, and also feel that along with that goes my support for candidates. And by the way, we do have at least one Republican candidate here tonight. I hope he'll identify himself. Supporting candidates is very important. My plan is
candidates in the audience tonight. We have lots of candidates in the audience tonight, actually, if I'm seeing correctly.
Excellent, excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Supporting candidates is very important too. My plan is to recruit someone to run against my current state rep, who has not been opposed by a Republican in at least 20 years. To run a Republican in this area is going to be something almost revolutionary after that long of time. I'll have to have a plan for him, and my idea always was that as a Republican around here, you could print your plan on the front page of the Boston Globe and put it on the television, and nobody would believe you're going to do it anyway, so you could be frank. So in that spirit, I asked you to tell me, when I recruit my candidate for state rep, what can I expect in terms of support from the state committee?
Yeah, that's fair enough, and this is being recorded, so let's not give out all our secrets to the Democrats, but we are working on tools to, our focus at the state committee and the staff is really spending all of our time not focusing on individual fires, if you will, because we've done a lot of that over the last few years and it distracts us. What we really need to do is focus on building resources that are going to help everybody. And one of the best things you're going to find is that our Get Out the Vote tools for next year, which were used on the Romney-Healey campaign last year, and what a lot of people, a lot of political observers have acknowledged, is that last year's gubernatorial election was the first time we really beat the Democrats on the ground in this state in a long time. We won the Get Out the Vote battle. We got more of our voters identified, and we got them out. And we have a tool that we're putting in place to help implement that on our legislative candidates and other races level. And I think you'll be very impressed with it. I don't want to get too into detail with it, but you know, it'll be an opportunity for all these candidates to use on a more local level what we did on the statewide level last year.
Yeah, and broadly, it's training, it's infrastructure to run the campaigns, and significant help in helping them gather financial resources. Next question.
I'm an independent, and I have some concerns about your party. I would like to know why I would vote for you. When Clinton was in office, I did some work for him. I interpreted the book Democracy in America by de Tocqueville as it was never interpreted before. One of my talents was to connect the dots, to connect de Tocqueville's ideas and interpret them so we could use them in our lives today. I used the Mansfield edition. On page 59, it speaks of a long war, almost always places nations in the sad alternative that their defeat delivers them to destruction and their triumph to despotism. Is this where you're headed? Page 621. War, if it does not lead one to despotism suddenly by violence, it leads to it mildly through habits. In other words, Bush won't go to despotism through war with us, we the people, but with gently change our habits to fit despotism's structure. Change our habits, a high police presence, tanks on our streets in the Southwest, on our border. We are being manipulated into accepting a police state out of our fear. Centralization of political and administrative power and the dangers therein. De Tocqueville strongly says that this should not be done. This was done in Homeland Security. Page 285.
Could you possibly?
I'd like to finish this. How patriotism in religion is being manipulated to control the masses as it is in Islam. It's shoved down our throats every time we turn around. Religion everywhere, banging on the door. A great power over the people. Bush knows this, Rove knows this, because of my work. This is why the big push for religion.
May I
control.
please respond? I wish that
Yes.
you could have been. I wish that you could be with me on September 11th and spend, as I did, the day with the families of the dead from Massachusetts who still mourn their dead.
Why do you have a tank on
Ma'am,
the Southwest
what we are
border?
doing as a nation is defending our freedoms here in the United States. It's that simple. I know you feel strongly about this. I know you feel strongly about this, but
knowing that all these things that Bush shouldn't do. And one other point that I'll leave you with is that Bush left Texas in the red, and he's leaving us in the red. And now he's privatizing Medicare. He's going after Social Security.
Ma'am, you cannot put a cost on security. The highest duty of government is to provide safety for its inhabitants.
That's all you have to talk about.
We disagree. We disagree.
United we stand, divided we fall. And
Thank you very much. We disagree.
Hello, Lieutenant Governor Healy. Hi. I have a question for you. With Massachusetts, where it's so expensive here, I was involved when I was in college with the Teamsters. So to be with the unions, it seems like the 20%, if we cut some of the union wages, what you had said that you want to do for savings, it cuts the people's money, the ability of the workers to pay. So I don't know where you find the balance with that, because it is so expensive in Massachusetts. I, for one, think that all the unions bring the other people up along with them in terms of that.
It's great to see you, by the way. It's good to have Beverly people here in the audience tonight. And I wasn't suggesting that we should cut the wages of the union workers, but merely that all the work should not be directed to 20% of our construction industry. And it makes sense that we have a number of people who are independent contractors out there, who have smaller companies, who have non-union workers, who would benefit from working on public jobs. Right now that just isn't possible because they don't have the access to those, either because of project labor agreements or because of other requirements. For example, if you need a light bulb changed in some municipality, you have to pay prevailing wage. In some cases, that's $36 an hour. A lot of our city halls just don't repair sidewalks, don't replace light bulbs, don't make the routine maintenance that they need to on schools and other public buildings because they can't afford to do that. What we've done is we've proposed to say that if your town has fewer than 5,000 people in it, or if it costs less than $100,000, you don't have to pay that prevailing wage. You can hire someone local to do that work. So this isn't an anti-union vendetta in any way. It's just trying to level the playing field so that non-union workers and union workers can have the same opportunities to get those public dollars. That's really how we can stimulate the economy. If we're going to pump $14 billion of tax dollars into our economy, let's make sure it doesn't just get targeted to a narrow section of our population.
All righty. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
I was also curious with why we had two governors who had left the governorship before their terms were up. So just wondered about your thoughts on that.
Well, do you want me to, my honest answer on that? Because I do know them, and I understand the situation that perhaps that they've been in a little bit right now. And I think part of that is that there's a frustration to having an agenda, to having ideals, and trying to advance them in an environment where 300 of your vetoes are overturned. And our solution to that is that we want to change the environment. And I think that a lot of people are very defeatist about that. A lot of people have called me extremely idealistic because I think that we can revive the fortunes of the Republican Party here in Massachusetts and actually shift that balance to something that is more balanced. But I genuinely believe we can do that. And I think that, perhaps former governors became discouraged and, felt that they weren't really being able to do the job they'd been elected to do. And we are determined to do that job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Jean-Regal Ulysses.
Good to see you, Jean.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
I am the chairman of the Randolph Republican Town Committee. Before I go any further, I used to believe that if you were independent, you were leading toward us, so that our last speaker, she left. She made me change my position. I have to reconsider that. I think you folks, Darrell, I think you guys are doing a wonderful job, and especially when I first take on that position in Randolph, out of 16,000 registered voters, only 1,321 of us. And right now we're leading toward 2,000 with the effort, understand that if you're independent, you're with us, and we quite aggressively put the words out there. We get doing quite well, and I'm sure you can't learn any better for anyone but Carrie, and hanging in there, and we're doing a good job, and I'm sure we're going to be doing even better next year. And we're there, and the grassroots. I've been into 3 campaigns. Their campaign was the best organized grassroots in the state. So I think if we all pull together, we'll definitely achieve the goal then.
I really appreciate your comments. It's terrific because in the 351 towns around the Commonwealth, there's an energy that's building, and it's exciting, and it keeps us working at the state party in a tireless way. So thank you for all your contribution and help.
And I'd also like to say that I genuinely appreciate the support of the Haitian community, and that has been very important to us.
We want to turn them into Republicans.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Moriello. I'm from Linfield. Just a really quick question. I'm not going to read from a book or anything. Just basically my question is, I attended the Women's Political Summit. Lieutenant Governor, you were there. And the main focus was getting women involved in politics. But for me, I'm 22. I have some of my young friends here. We're all involved in politics. And I know a lot of our ambition in life is eventually one day to run for office. I ran for my local office of selectman back in April. I took initiative. I had the time of my life. But what are you guys doing to recruit young candidates? I'm talking, right out of school. Are you willing to, back them up? I know myself, I'd love to run, but it's a little intimidating. And I know you want to get out the vote, and there's a lot of young people that are more involved and want to do more than you probably know. And I would hope that you would try to bring them in and get them really ambitious and excited to do it, because it can be kind of scary. And I kind of want to know what you guys plan on doing to help out the younger people, 20s. Not that over 20 is old, but...
you might remember that earlier this year we had a special...
That was a long time ago for me, so...
Not too long ago for me. You might remember earlier this year that there was an election down in Braintree, special state representative race. And, I think Matt Sisk in Braintree showed that, with a lot of energy and with a very clear message, you can come very close and possibly win races as a young person. It's not always about political experience. It's getting out, meeting voters, listening to them, having a clear message. For those who don't know the story, we had a special election down in Braintree. We had a 23-year-old who was living at home and not working at the time, but was a very energetic person. And he decided nobody else wanted to run for this open state representative seat because they all said, we can't win it. It's 4-1, Democrat to Republican enrollment disadvantage. Hadn't been a Republican seat in many, many years. But Matt Sisk said, heck, if no one else is going to run, I'm going to run, and I'm going to give it a good shot. His opponent was a mid-30s, married, had been the chief of staff to the outgoing popular state representative. He had worked as an assistant district attorney and attorney general, and it was an incumbent selectman. Everyone clearly said, there's no way this guy Matt Sisk is going to win. Well, Matt did what every good campaign should do. He went out and he knocked on doors, and he called his friends and raised some money and gave himself the resources and put himself in the position to, on election day, he lost by just 400 votes out of 12,000 votes cast. And clearly, it wasn't a win, but it was a moral victory for Matt. And I think it's a moral victory for a lot of our candidates next year that, we have the right message with the governor and lieutenant governor leading the way to reform Beacon Hill, that you can get out there and work hard and voters will listen to you.
And I would say that was a 12-week special election. Matt was behind by 35 points when we ran our first poll, and as Dominic mentioned, we were, it was by a nose. So again, that was the get out the vote technology. It was the coaching and training from the state party, and we had a candidate who was willing to get out there and do the work.
Hi, I'm Steve Wardell, and I live in Back Bay. And I had a question, maybe for you three, or ideally for Lieutenant Governor Healy, and that is, one factor that makes a huge difference from election to election is the exact issues in the election. So if you have really compelling issues, they can motivate the grassroots. You can have people standing outside of polls, people going door to door, canvassing, knocking and dragging, all that sort of stuff. And what are those issues going to be for Massachusetts Republicans for the next election? Is national defense going to do it for us? Is something else going to do it for us? What are the top 2 picks maybe of each of you? And the second thing is, what do you think of the referendum process in all of this? Don't you think all that does is just deflate our momentum, and stop and slow our momentum? Because referendums pass issues.
I don't believe that there will be as many referendum questions this year that are pertinent, as have been in previous years. We are going to continue to push the reform agenda, and it will have many different aspects. Some of them I mentioned earlier. We're going to be asking for the consolidation of a number of the various agencies in government that we find wasteful, like the Turnpike Authority. We also are going to be talking about the consolidation of the courts. We have right now before us billions of dollars in renovations of courts, and we have 112 courts in Massachusetts, and if every person in Massachusetts needed to only be, say, 15 miles from the nearest court, we all go to court maybe 1 or 2 times in our life, we hope, perhaps to contest a traffic ticket or register something. 15 miles doesn't seem unreasonable. If we were all 15 miles from a court, we wouldn't need 112. We'd only need 12. So to think that the current plan has been to march through all 112 courthouses and renovate each of them to the tune of 10, 15, or several $100 million each was a crazy plan. But no one had stepped back and said, how many do we actually need? In truth, maybe we need 50 or 60 at most for everyone's convenience, and we need to consolidate them. So there are things that we're going to be talking about which have to do with the reform agenda, have to do with this idea that we can govern smarter, that we can govern better, and we're going to be focusing our candidates on those issues. And candidates always have to run on local issues, but part of it will be that they support the Romney reform agenda, which is going to help get what needs to be done to make sure that our economy gets back on track, that we get our jobs coming back into Massachusetts again, and that we're able to slim down government. So I think that the message is going to be very much the same. Maybe the components of that are going to be a little bit different depending on what we're able to get through this year. Maybe we'll be able to get transportation reform through before the election, but maybe not. So we expect it to be a rolling menu, but trust me, there's no shortage of things that need to be changed in government in Massachusetts. We aren't going to run out of them.
Any other favorite issues?
Oh, no, I think it's all of these are very compelling. I mean, you've heard just a few stories about the courthouses, about the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority. But again, we're going to be articulating in this election not only what reform can do, but what we could do with those dollars that we're going to save as we eliminate waste and patronage. And the real choice for voters is going to be, do you want to preserve the status quo with waste, patronage, and inefficiency in government, or do you want reform and do you want programs that are accountable and work? And what's so frustrating for me at times is so often when I tell these stories, people say, oh, gosh, you're the Republican Party chair. You must be partisan. What's the other side of the issue? And the nice thing about facts is that they're really not debatable. And when the statistics that the Lieutenant Governor is giving, the statistics that we are using are just clear, they're provable, and in many respects our arguments are self-evident, and we just need folks to listen and understand. And as they do and as they understand this, just to go back to the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority, $210 million. What does that mean? That means in this last year, the total amount of local aid cuts was $226 million. What does that mean for these communities? Every community that had a Prop 2.5 vote, which were very divisive among young, pitting young families versus seniors in communities, it didn't have to happen if that one reform had been done. But what the legislature made the choice to do was, to push down on local communities because they knew that local communities would buy the argument, oh, the governor did this to you. Completely false. But they could say that, and some people would believe it, and some people are predisposed to believe it. But their real choice was creating that divisiveness in communities or preserving jobs, for patronage jobs, for their friends in an organization that, look, I love the Massachusetts Turnpike. I really like 495 also. And when I drive on both, they feel the same. But to drive on the Mass Turnpike, it's $210,000 a mile, and to drive on 495, it's $88,000 a mile to maintain it for a year. It doesn't have to happen. There are lots of kids who could be educated in schools, with those dollars. So you're getting a sense of where we're at.
We've kind of reached just about the end of the time,
just
so
have one
could
more.
you make just this a quick question?
I'll try. I'm not planning to read out of the book, but considering that we have majority of Republican Wales of the state, I'd like to ask you a little bit more theoretical, perhaps a little less relevant question to the discussion. From a business experience, the best way to beat your opponent is to understand it well. Besides the point that Massachusetts is prevalent in large numbers of educational institutions where a large number of employees involved, where majority of the professors are very liberal and therefore tend to be more democratic. Is there any other reasons that you can think of why the numbers in even such cities as you mentioned, for example, Braintree, the Democrats are 4-1 to Republicans?
Well, sure. It's some of it's historical. There was this guy, Tip O'Neill, in the 1950s who went around and did exactly what we're doing today, going into communities. And the way we're finding candidates, Dominic mentioned that we went to the 1,600 Republican officials, but we're also going into communities and asking a very simple question. Who does everybody know, and who would be interested in stepping forward and has had any inkling, maybe it's never been exhibited, but just an inkling to step forward for public service. And those are the folks who are going to come forward. They're going to be very strong candidates. And that's what happened back in the 1950s. And the message grew, the Kennedys came along, and people having that sort of reflex response to register as a Democrat versus a Republican seemed to be the case. Today, though, the roles of our party are constant or growing, and for the Democrats in Massachusetts, they're declining. We have this increased group of independents. 53% of Massachusetts are independent voters. And we need to articulate the message that parties are good. They are good for democracy. And I think our message is so compelling, that's why we're seeing increased registration.
So we just need to find the Republican Tip O'Neill?
I don't have enough money to.
Well, I just wanted to thank our three panelists, Dominic Ianno, Darrell Crate, and Lieutenant Governor Kerry Healy, and I'm not sure what else I should say except to thank all of you.
Good. I echo that. I'll also add Bill Mayer.